Hey guys, welcome to Digit.in. I'm Shubhajit and I'm going to talk about the cameras on the Realme 6 Pro. The Realme 6 Pro just launched in India and it comes with 6 cameras on the body. There's 4 at the back and 2 right on front. And it's quite versatile, the camera lenses on this phone, and you can actually make use of all the 6 lenses to shoot very different kinds of photos. Let's start with the primary camera on the back. You have a 64 megapixels Samsung sensor out here. It's a Samsung GW1 ISOCELL, and you get a surface area of around 1 by 1.72 inches. That's a lot of space for a smartphone camera sensor to absorb a lot of light and enhance the sharpness and details in your photos. That's followed by another 8 megapixel ultra wide, which offers a field of view of around 119 degrees with aperture of f2.3. Then we have another 12 megapixel telephoto lens that delivers 2x in optical zoom, 5x, 10x and 20x in hybrid and digital zoom, followed by another 2 megapixel macro lens that can let you go as close as 4 centimeters to your subject to let you capture all your subjects as close as possible. That's the rear camera composition. On the front, you have a 16 megapixel Sony IMX471 selfie camera and another 8 megapixel ultra wide cameras for your group selfies. So that covers a lot of things as far as the cameras are concerned, letting you shoot in different modes, letting you zoom in, zoom out, take a very highly detailed photo, and lets you do the same from the front as well. So pretty feature packed. I just wonder how the performance of the cameras on the Realme 6 Pro will be. Now before we begin, let me quickly thank you guys for all the feedback that you guys have been leaving on our videos that we published. So, and don't forget to hit the bell icon to keep up to date with all our videos in the future. So with that out of the way, let's begin. Now let's start with the 64 megapixel camera out here at the back. So the 64 megapixel camera on the Realme 6 Pro is actually really good. I mean, the tuning is pretty good. You get photos that look vibrant, sharp and well detailed. And honestly, I couldn't manage to take a lot of photos. I only managed around 67 photos on the Realme 6 Pro for the time I had the device before I had to record this video. So my sample size is at this time pretty small, but most of the images that I have taken came out really well, which sort of instills a lot of confidence in me in using this camera in all sorts of situations. So I'm going to start off with a daylight shot out here that came out really nice, and it was shot in the afternoon where the sun was directly overhead, and that's not the best time to take your photos, but in this case the photo came out really good, well lit, lots of details. The dynamic range is right on point and you can make out the colors and all the elements in the photo perfectly well. I'm sure a lot of other devices in this price range can also take good photos, but this one is pretty good. Like, if you are using this camera, know that the daylight performance on this phone is actually pretty good. Now let's move on to the second one, where I took this sort of modern art statue inside a hotel, and this also came out really good. I was looking to see how good the camera captures rough textures, and right out here you can see the textures on this piece of modern art came out perfectly well. You can actually distinguish between every lines on the body as well as the color and the varying shades of it. So that is pretty good. We also took a couple of indoor shots to see how the camera performs when you're inside a well lit apartment or a hotel or even a restaurant. And again, the dynamic range sort of surprised us. We would have expected a slightly better performance out of the HDR algorithm, but so far so good. It's actually putting up a lot of details in especially where the shadows are. So that's again another good thing. Now daylight photos can also be enhanced in app with this option called Chroma Boost that is right inside the app if you look at on top. And that actually helps in adding a touch of extra saturation and a lot of contrast and boosting the clarity of your photo. So if you kind of like boosted colors in your photos, this mode will actually keep you really happy with your photos. But if you don't, you can turn it off and you'll get close to natural colors. I will say the colors still look quite punchy and there's a lot of vibrancy to it. But otherwise, if you turn it off, you get slightly more natural looking colors, right? Now, moving on to the telephoto lens on this one, which is a 12 megapixel telephoto lens, and telephoto lenses in this price segment have actually become quite rare. It started off when dual camera started off, with one primary and one telephoto, and then that quickly moved on to the depth sensors, then came the ultra wide, and now telephoto is making a comeback in this quad camera setup. The telephoto on the Realme 6 Pro offers 2x in optical zoom, 5x, 10x and up to 20x in hybrid and digital zoom. Needless to say, you get the best results in the optical zoom at up to 2x, and as you go further and further you start losing in details, but till up to 5x the sharpness is still okay. It's not really bad, it's not unusable, but just about okay. But at 10x and 20x it's better left unused. We got good details and good sharpness with the telephoto lens as well, but what we didn't like is the fact that the telephoto lens had a slightly slow shutter. So from the primary to the telephoto tends to have a slightly slow shutters, but this one on the one on the Realme 6 Pro is actually quite prominent, and you might not enjoy if you're taking a photo of a moving object and you might just miss that shot. So that's there. Zoom again, like I said, is only good at 2x, as you can see from this sample, but moment you move to 5x you have a big loss in amount of details that you get in your photos. As far as the ultra wide lens is concerned, it does offer a wide field of view up to 119 degrees. That's good enough to capture like wide landscapes, and if you're out on a vacation, especially in the hills or on the beach, it lets you capture a lot of elements in one go. It's a way of not relying much on the panorama mode, which takes a little bit more attention from you. Instead, you can just switch to the ultra wide and get a lot wider view. The good part is you get really good colors out of it. The sharpness is really good. The details when you zoom in is not all that good. It's okay, it's still there, but I would have expected a little better detail, especially around the edges. Having said that, you get almost similar colors from the primary to the telephoto to the ultra wide, which means the consistency across all the lenses are pretty good. Realme has actually worked on the software and the tuning of the camera a lot to deliver consistent performance across all the 4 lenses at the back. So no matter which lens you shoot, if you're going from the primary to the telephoto to the ultra wide, you're going to get the same sort of color and the same sort of saturation across. And the good part is the telephoto also supports the Chroma boost mode. So if you like to shoot at elevated contrast levels and saturation levels, you can also do that. We're going to move on to the macro lens, which is actually the weakest of the 4 lenses out here. It's a 2 megapixel macro lens, letting you go as close as 4 centimeters, and we used these miniature toys that we had specifically to test out macro lenses on smartphones, and by the looks of it, it's not a very good performer. There's a lot of noise in the photo, and it's surprising because we had taken this photo indoors with the natural light coming in through the window. So it remains to be seen whether this can be improved through a future software update, but as of now, the macro camera lens is not very good. It's not also, it doesn't really fit into this quad camera setup with the previous 3 lenses working really well, and then suddenly you have the macro lens that immediately drops down the quality of the photo that you're getting. So if there was some consistency maintained across all the 4 lenses, it would have given us a good opportunity to call this one a benchmark camera for the mid-range segment, but because the macro lens is still a work in progress, it seems. Let's move on to the night mode on this camera next. Realme has been shipping night modes in its mid-range smartphones for quite some time, and the night mode on the Realme 6 Pro has actually improved a little. You can now take night mode photos using the ultra wide lens as well as the telephoto lens, and of course the 64MP primary lens. The good thing is you can go all the way up to 20x, and there's also a tripod mode which lets you use the night mode that keeps the shutter open for longer to capture light trails and if you're up for it, a little bit of astrophotography as well. Now, we haven't tried out those things, we haven't gotten the opportunity for that yet, but we're definitely going to try that out for our in-depth review that's going to come out later. So stay tuned for that. But what we're going to say is that while you do get all the options in night mode, it's only usable good enough when used with the primary lens. Why do we say that? Because if you look at these samples of the night mode shots taken across all the 3 lenses, you don't have macro in tandem with the night mode yet, then you get the best quality out of the 1x primary, which is a 64 megapixel lens. The details aren't very much there, but the photos do come out pretty sharp. So if you zoom in, the details, straight lines are going to get smudged. It's going to look like a painting, a watercolor painting of that too. And if you zoom in or zoom out, you're going to start losing details very significantly. So you have this photo taken with the ultra wide lens, where you can see at the edges there's hardly any focus. There's a lot of shake around the edges, but the photo is also quite dark. So the details again will not be there since it's already dark, but it's also not very sharp as well. So using the night mode in tandem with the ultra wide camera is not very recommended unless you find like a very well lit spot. In that case, you don't need the night mode at all. The same goes along with the telephoto lens. It anyway has an f2.5 aperture, which is on the smaller side. So your details and sharpness are anyway going to be pretty low, especially at low light. Combine that with the night mode, the results doesn't improve all that much. But good thing is you do get super sharp images from the primary lens. So your low light photos, I would recommend to stick to only the primary lens when you're using the night mode. So as you can see in this sample out here in your screen, the text and everything, especially using the night mode, come out really sharp and crisp, and so does the textures and details. What you don't get to see is the amount of details like you see in the daylight shots. That amount of details won't be here, but it's still far more usable than when you're using the ultra wide or the telephoto. So we covered all the 4 lenses in the rear camera setup. As far as selfies are concerned, you do get good images, good selfies from the front camera. There's of course the beautifying mode on. Turning that on will make your skin look very smooth with no blemishes, no spots whatsoever, almost perfect to the T. But if you're looking for some sort of realism in your photo, it's better to turn that off, and suddenly you're going to get a lot of details in your face and surroundings. Also, one good thing I noticed is the selfie camera does come with a night mode, especially if you're shooting against a strong backlight. If you use the night mode in that case, then that strong backlight can be controlled to deliver a very sharp and crisp selfie image. So even in daylight. So that's one good thing that you can look for when using the Realme 6 Pro, especially the selfie camera. There's also an ultra wide mode in the selfie camera that works best when there's a lot of light, not so much when the light is poor. So we talked about all the 6 lenses on the Realme 6 Pro. So let's quickly sum it up. Here's what it does very well, the Realme 6 Pro, and it does a lot of things very well. The Realme 6 Pro is able to capture greenery, captures flowers, buildings, landscapes, and photos taken under natural light really well. It does struggle with still life objects a little bit, and the macro lens, which is not as consistent as you would expect from after looking at all the other 3 lenses. I would give this camera really high points in our review. We still expect a lot more tuning to happen, especially around the macro camera app and the HDR algorithm a little bit, but it's almost near perfect at release, which is rare to see these days when companies are still shipping smartphones with incomplete softwares and then patching it later with future updates. In this case, this one is ready to be used from the get-go, straight out of the box, which is really good. I like the fact that Realme is offering a lot of versatility in its camera setup. All the 4 lenses offer different functions, which is really good. As also the front camera, which is the secondary front camera, which is not a depth sensor, which does have very limited usage. Instead, it gives you an ultra wide lens for your group selfies. So it's a well thought out camera stack, well optimized as well, and you get really good details. Now it remains to be seen when you're shooting tricky situations just how good it appears, and we're going to test that out in our review video. So that's more or less it from the camera side of things with the Realme, where the Realme 6 Pro is concerned. We're also coming out with a video for the performance and gaming bit of the Realme 6 Pro, and even making comparison against the Poco X2. So check that out in our channel, and also let us know what you thought of this video in the comment section below. And for more videos like this, stay tuned to digit.in. Thanks for watching.